Hi, I'm Richie Hessian. I'm the CEO of Blue Crest Recovery Center, and this is the Blue Crest podcast. And joining us today. So thank you for everybody, for all 8 people that are out there watching us. We appreciate you. Actually, a lot of people see this now. So Nicoletta, you get a little nervous. There's a lot of people that watch now. And anybody who doesn't see it now, like literally, I think 8,000 views last time. So just throwing a little extra pressure on you to do a good job.
No pressure.
So today we're going to have a cool one, I think. I love it. And we've all just been having a very brief chat because we didn't want to get too much into it before we started. But we are going to be talking about what it is to live a life of recovery. We get into a life of recovery and then to go into the treatment industry, to work in this field, which is for some people, and I think we would all agree that it's a blessing beyond blessings to be able to do something we have a normal passion for, to earn a living doing something you're passionate about. I think is rare in this world. It shouldn't be, but it probably is. And I feel blessed that I'm able to do it. And other people try to do that, and it doesn't work out very well. And so one of the overarching, which we're going to come back to and we're going to get into, but one of the overarching themes of this is that 3 out of 4, because really, what do we have this for? People are going to watch us. You get what you get out of any kind of podcast. But a lot of people young in recovery look to become counselors. I think it's part of human nature. I believe that people are mostly good. I'm not a pessimist or a cynic. I believe most people have that. And when you get sober, it's like that charcoal-covered, dirt, grime-covered, perfect diamond that we had when we were born gets covered with a lot of yuck as we get older, and the fear, guilt, shame, the misery of addiction and alcoholism all cover it up. And eventually you get sober and you start cleaning that off a little, and some of that diamond starts shining through. And when it does, I find that people want to help others. I think that's a natural, innate part of a human being. Most human beings on the planet is we actually do want to help people. And when people get in early recovery, it comes out a lot. There's a lot of people who do. And so anybody watching that's new to recovery, you may be thinking to yourself like, oh, I'd like to be, well, one of the overarching warnings, right? The caution label at the bottom of this one is 3 out of 4 people who do try and do it relapse. So that's the real deal. So you got to be mindful and careful. What are you doing? Why are you doing it? Motivations, the plan, how you go about it, if it's right for you. And we're going to talk a little bit about all of that. So today, joining us, I've got Nicoletta Danicic.
Correct.
Did I say it right or no?
You got it.
You sure, right?
Nobody says it right.
Yeah, but I
from another country,
right.
but
pronounce it right.
Danicic.
Danicic.
Yeah.
See? There you go. Nicoletta Danicic. I like to say it right because that's who you are. Beautiful. And she is the director of Milestone House. If you've not heard of Milestone House, I'm a big fan. They are out in Dover, and they are rock star. Milestone works in tandem with Excel treatment facility, and they are amazing. They have a true sober community out there. I've always been a fan of your guys. We refer people out there when we're appropriate. So, and Mike Frank, I love Mike. He's amazing. Mike Frank, who runs the joint, is going to be here on our next podcast, and the topic will be announced. I've got Paul Hart. He's a behavioral health technician and supervisor at our very own Blue Crest Recovery Center. Right. Wait until you hear about Paul. He's one of my favorites. He's a fan favorite at Blue Crest. He's a great God guy, man, and I'm all about that. And then we've got Stephanie Davis, is it? Stephanie Davis, the easiest one to pronounce.
It's hard to get that one right. I know.
Stephanie, she is the regional manager for RCA, Recovery Centers of America, for anybody not in the know, but I think everyone in the world probably knows what RCA is by now. And she's the regional manager for all of New York and all of New Jersey. So anybody out there and that needs help and you're looking to reach out to someone, she runs their outreach. And in anything in New York and New Jersey, if you want help, that's the gal to call. Or she can put you in touch with the people who you should be calling at RCA. And me, of course, I'm Richie. I'm the CEO of Blue Crest, and that's it. So, reminder, which Kevin makes me do, you can listen to this podcast on our website, bluecrestrc.com. You can subscribe on the major streaming platforms, iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Anybody who is on YouTube, if you're listening, feel free to sign into your YouTube account. That's the only way you can leave a question or a comment, is signing into your actual account, and then they're able to give questions. We're going to ask Nick if there's any listener questions or comments throughout the show. Nick will read them out to us. You may like some of them and you may not like others, but we're just going to throw it out there regardless. Nick, are you around? Nick's not here now, so it's very unlikely we're actually going to get the questions, but he will be here in the background somewhere. He's always here hanging in the background. And that's it. So, how we decided we were going to get this thing started was I'm going to have everybody go around. I haven't told anybody what the order was going to be. And I was going to pick Nicoletta first because she's the most nervous, and I still might. I just haven't decided yet. But we're all going to go. We're going to do this almost like a what it was like, what happened, and what we're like now leading us up to working in the treatment field. And then we're going to kind of bounce back and forth, some highs and lows and cautionary tales. And I'm sure a lot of stuff will come up just naturally on its own. But we're going to ask everybody to do a little background of where they come from, experience, strength, and hope. The shortened version of this story, if you can include how long you've been sober and how long you've been working in the treatment field, kind of as you start to tell your story to kind of set the stage for everybody. And then if you can give us 5 to 8 minutes of kind of who you are, and that way everybody watching can kind of know who this is sitting here talking about the topic, that would be great. And why don't we start with Stephanie?
I
Little trickery. I did it just so she's going like this, but then she'll realize better to get it over with. You gotta sweat it out for 8 minutes.
Okay.
Wow, you're a torturer, man.
I'm gonna set timers for each of you that you don't have to exactly to, but it'll give us each a just a general idea of our time, so we don't.
There we go. Ready, set, go! No,
Stephanie, go.
All right. So, as you were previously told, my name is Stephanie Davis. I am the Regional Manager for Recovery Centers of America. How I got here today is a long and distinguished story. Like so many others, my addiction was the worst of the worst. I mean, it came with all of the bells and whistles. Homelessness, arrest, loss of family, loss of dignity, shame, guilt, you name it. I am a 12-step girl, so I don't believe in reveling on, the nitty-gritty. I will say, though, that it is only by the grace of God that I am alive today to share my story. For me, finding treatment wasn't so easy. I had no family at that point. I had destroyed a nursing career. I had really pushed everyone that cared anything about me away. I was still surrounded by all those that said they were my friends, as long as I had drugs in my pocket, right? But it was only by the grace of God that I was found by another soul who happened to be in law enforcement. And this particular officer would just not leave me alone. She said, there's something in there. There's something that you need to give back. And handed me the card of someone that's very much like me today and said, just give her a call. And I did. And I picked up my first white trip in detox. And I spent 11 months under the treatment umbrella. By the time I picked up that first white chip in detox, I was completely broken and had figured out by only the grace of God that my way didn't work. And everything my way had brought me was where I was at right then. Now, those were only fleeting moments because I was that client. I was that client that looked at the fence every day and struggled and threatened to kick me out multiple times, and but I held on with every white knuckle I had, and I made it through every level of care, including sober living. We were just saying how much I appreciate that extended blanket of love and support that's so necessary. But I will say I sit here 16 years later still with that one white chip. And it was only by the grace of God and following the lead of those within the treatment world that got me where I was at. And, today I am a mother, I am a wife, I am a sponsor, I am a friend, I am a daughter and a sister, and I am so many things. And only through my recovery can I say that I'm those things. And since that first white chip, I knew that I wanted to give it back, but I didn't know how. Through the grace of God, I was going to do that while maintaining, everything in life that I knew I had to have. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell.
That's excellent. That is excellent.
Thank you.
For this, like, that's a perfect kind of, now I know who you are, where you came from, and you didn't. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I love it. And actually, I'm going to change the time to 6 minutes, because if you could do that in 4, less than 4, you guys shouldn't need more than that.
Holy cow.
You just changed the bar for everybody else. No, you know what? We'll keep it what I said, because you just might be better at the rest of us at being more concise. Me, I just go on and on. So now we will, without dragging it out much further to torture the poor soul, we will go with Paul.
Oh,
You thought I
he
knew?
loves me.
He does love you. He's saving the best for
He
last.
loves me.
He really is saving the best for last.
All right. So thank you, Stephanie. I'm Paul Hart. I'm a supervisor of the payroll techs at Blue Crest. Love my job. And so about me, I've got a story that I like to tell whenever I talk about me. First of all, I'm from New York. I'm not from New Jersey. And I grew up and I was a high school basketball star. You wouldn't be able to tell it looking at me now, but I was all-city basketball player in New York. And I'll never forget this one. In my junior year, there was this big basketball game, and there was this big article in the Daily News, and it said, Paul H. has to have a huge game if my high school was going to win. And I'll never forget reading that article. I'll never forget reading that, and I took it around to show all my teachers. And so we went out, and we got ready for that game, and I still remember walking into that other high school. And I can still feel it now. I remember walking in that school, and it felt like everybody was paying attention to me. And I was like, yeah, I walked in. And my teammates were giving me 5, and we walked in, and we went into the locker room, everybody saying, yo, Paul, man, you got to do it. You got to do it. And I went out that day, and I had a pretty good game. I had about 29 points, about 11 rebounds, 11 assists, depending on how good I feel. You know, those numbers change depending on how I feel. So, but I had a pretty good game. We won that game.
It's a triple-double.
I got a triple-double that day.
It's a triple-double.
Right? We got on a school bus to come home, and one of their cheerleaders came over and sat on my lap. So now you got to remember, now, the 16, 17-year-old guy, I've got this cheerleader on my lap. I just won the big game. Everybody talking about me. And then now the guys were drinking on the bus. Somebody handed me a beer. So now I've got a beer in my hand. I just won the game. This cheerleader sitting here. And I only tell that story because that moment was the greatest moment of my life.
I have arrived.
And I feel like I spent my whole life chasing that moment. I always wanted the girl, the drink, or the drug, and the attention. And I spent years chasing that. So I went on. I went to a Division II school. I had the opportunity to go to a small Division I or a big Division II. I chose to go to a small Division II because I wanted to be the big guy there. Didn't want to go sit the bench. And went to college, and my addiction took me. I lost my college scholarship through my addiction. I can tell you about it later, but I went to college, drank my way out of my scholarship. Knew I had a drinking problem. Came back home, graduated from college. Decided after I graduated from college, I said, something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me, and I couldn't figure it out. So I went to the military. And because I did well in college, I went to Navy OCS in Newport, Rhode Island. I went there, and after its 2 8-week programs, so 16 weeks, after the first 8 weeks, they gave me some time off. They gave us, and I went down to town, and went into this bar and drank myself into oblivion. I lost. When I came to, it was time to go back. To lead the 26th Battalion in PT, and I was a day late. Needless to say, I was AWOL from the United States Navy. I lost my ability to become a United States naval officer. Mm-hmm. So with all that being said, I knew that I had a drinking problem. I came back home, got a good job in an insurance company, and there's when it started getting bad for me. And I met a guy named Ray L., and he told me that I had a problem. and he helped me get into treatment. I went to treatment, and I'll say this: treatment helped me get 9.5 years of sobriety. And after 9.5 years, I took back my will. I started believing that I had it, and after 9.5 years of sobriety, I relapsed. In that 9.5 years, I had gotten an MBA. I had gotten a great job. I was doing big things. I relapsed after 9 years of sobriety. I was working on Wall Street. I had that 6-figure job. I relapsed and lost it all. I lost it all. Now I've got 8 years back, almost 8 years back. I love what I'm doing. I'm a behavioral tech supervisor. And Richie, you mentioned about having a passion to do this. I love this job. I love what I'm doing, and I wouldn't want to do anything else. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
It's a good one. Another very good. Well done.
Yeah.
And you did it in less than the 6 minutes. All right. That's a lot of pressure for
All
you.
right, I got more
And
minutes.
now we will finally, actually, instead of me jumping in and telling a little about myself, we'll let Nicoletta go.
Thank you. I'm Nicoletta Danicic. It's hard to pronounce, so just Nicoletta. I am the director of Milestone House. It's a transitional sober living place in Dover. That's current status, but I've been sober for a little bit over 14 years. I've worked in the field since I was 7 months sober officially. I had my first paycheck from the Milestone House. I kind of fell into it. But I'm from Serbia, Belgrade, former Yugoslavia. I was born and raised there. When I was 14, I emigrated to New York City with my sister. My mom was already there, and there were some hardships in the beginning of our stay where we ended up being homeless and living in an abandoned building. This is way before I picked up a drink or a drug, and we got out of that through hard work and perseverance and effort and survival skills and, setting goals that, that we can overcome. So I became very ambitious. I became very driven. And by the time I was 16, I graduated high school, a valedictorian. I was living by myself, supporting myself. I put myself through college. I had some academic success. I had some financial success. I never really knew what I wanted to do. I think as a result of my drinking and drugging, I was changing my major like every 6 months. Arts and English. I ended up graduating with a philosophy degree. And, to reward myself, I would come home and, the drinking would create relief from this life and this pressure that I was experiencing internally and from not knowing myself and being disconnected from the depth of my being, basically. I mean, it was a solution to my unmanageability, really, and inability to meet life on life's terms, actually. And when I was 27, I experienced a profound surrender, really, under the influence of drugs and alcohol. I'm an alcoholic and a cocaine addict. I shout that from the rooftops. This is who I am. This is what I've been through. This is what I've done. It's also to paint a picture of kind of the life I lived. And I think cocaine use also sped up my bottom by the time I was 27, even though I've lived alone from the age of 16. So it was an 11-year step one experience that I just couldn't get with. And, there were efforts in the last few years of my drinking and drugging. There was this idea I can succeed and I've done so much, so there's absolutely no way that I can get through this, right? I kept relying on my mind to come up with an answer on how to get through this difficulty I was having with managing my drinking and my drugging. And at that point, I was working for a company. It was the greatest rug company in the world that worked with Christie's and Sotheby's. I was actually in charge of their accounting department, and I would be sending messengers out during lunch to get me airplane bottles, and I was having all these ugly experiences that we need to have to kind of get in touch with reality of what's going on. Fainting in the New York City subway and having seizures when I was 26 and not making it to work and being late and all of that, all of these experiences, all of the pain that comes with And at 27, I had a profound experience under the influence of drugs and alcohol. At that point, I was already seeing a therapist who was trying to convince me I was an alcoholic, and I was trying to convince him that I wasn't. And when I had this experience, he actually referred me to treatment in Pennsylvania called Marwort. I came in there not understanding why they wanted to search me, because I didn't understand why anybody would go to treatment with anything on them. Like, to me, that was never an option. Like, either you do it all the way, or once you go in, kind of. That was my idea. I had no idea that there was a treatment world out there. I had no understanding of that. But I had an incredible experience in treatment, I think, because of the incredible experience I had with my step 1 experience of unmanageability and powerlessness. And then I put myself in a halfway house for women, also in Pennsylvania, for 90 days, because I was sure that I was going to drink, even though the mental obsession was removed to drink. I was sure. I was so scared that I wanted to be locked up. And then I said, okay, it's time to rebuild life and build back, because I lost everything, my apartment, my job, finances, bank account, phone, everything. And they gave me an option of a sober house in Dover, and I landed there, never having seen it, on a Saturday, January 13, 2007, with 5 months sober. And Mike Frank, my current boss, opened the door, all frazzled and overwhelmed with the one sober house he was running by himself at that time. And, I think I teared up at the sight of Mike in the sober living home. After New York City, after living in Manhattan for 13 years. And no, this is not a Jersey or city accent.
I wonder if that's an act of Mike's. He always seems frazzled and overwhelmed. It's an act, I think.
You'll see next podcast.
Yeah, exactly,
Stay tuned. But, listen, I was grateful. I was humble. I was open. I was so broken that I was open, so it really didn't matter where I was. I was grateful to be alive, and I got there, and I did get a job, any job that I could get in the area, so I could pay rent and start building back. But after work, because I didn't have a phone, I didn't have the money for a phone. I would see Mike all frazzled, with 2 fingers typing receipts in his office, pile of them like this. I'd be like, can I help you? And of course I would be in like 5 minutes, done, I also made this spreadsheet, and I made this a little bit easier for you, and let me know if you need more help. There's 3 hours till the next meeting, And so I fell into what I'm doing today. I didn't ask for it. I didn't look for it. I didn't wish for it. To me, it didn't matter. I have a gift of being a very good worker. I don't pat myself on the back with that. I've been working full time since I was 16. And I take seriously responsibilities, and I'm sort of a perfectionist, and I, want to do well, and, I want to please, and all of that was present. But I did get a sense that this was the only thing that I started doing that I was actually enjoying or speaking the language of it from a personal experience. So that was like very exciting. Other jobs were not exciting. This was very exciting. So I started volunteering for Mike, and I was having an incredible experience with step work, and kind of trusting life. Trusting God, trusting higher power, trusting life, trusting universe, trusting whatever came my way. And I think Mike offered me like pennies more to quit the job I got in Denville and to help him out administratively in the office. He just purchased the second house at that time, and he really just needed help. And I think he saw the way I lived and moved at that point, and how I was moved by step work. Wow. I can talk.
Yeah, no. That's why I said
I'm going to take her 3 minutes and his 2 minutes.
Okay, all right.
We have the time.
All right.
And I started working April of 2007 when I had 7 months sober. And now we have 4 houses, a treatment center, and a coffee shop. It's a little empire, Dover empire. So that's a little bit of my story.
All right.
Thank you. It's good stuff.
Absolutely.
The treatment shop, the coffee shop, I love because that's what makes it like part of the community.
Yeah.
Up there. They have newly sober kids who work in the coffee shop. The coffee shop is right in back of the treatment facility, which is down the street
Right.
from one of the sober homes, and
Right.
it's all like a very community kind of thing out there. Which
Wow.
I love that. I think it's pretty cool.
Nicolette, did you say that you went to Marworth?
Yep.
That was actually my first treatment.
Yep.
That was actually in Marworth in Pennsylvania.
Margaret in
One of
Pennsylvania.
the things I like about Marworth from people I know that have gone up, and I know a guy who worked in the counseling services unit of the FDNY who sends a lot of people to Marworth
Yes.
all the time.
Yes.
And the one thing I liked about Marworth is that they have big books everywhere.
Yes.
And that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some of them are
Absolutely.
very-
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
one
Yes.
common thread, right?
Yeah.
Is
Yes.
we're all big book people.
Exactly.
The
Is that a
greatest
coincidence?
experience.
I
I
don't
gotta
know.
tell you, I walked in there
yes.
and they said, "Why you're here?" I said, "I don't want to die." She handed me the big book.
That's it.
Exactly.
At
Yes.
intake.
Yep.
Boom.
Yes.
There
Yep.
you go. Now,
I
for
was
anybody who
handed
doesn't
mine.
know, the Big Book is literature. In out in the 12-step world, there's all sorts of fellowships. None of us at the level of radio, press, or film will align ourselves with a particular fellowship, but there is a book that is the basis of all 12-step work. Whatever fellowship has grown out of that, which many of us were lucky enough to have been handed a copy of and followed some
God.
directions to get really sober. But one of the other reasons why it's good to have different folks from different walks of life and different. One thing I noticed common about the three of you that's different than me was that you all seem to be graduated of college. You went to college, you went to
I
college,
did.
you went to college.
Yes.
Not me. I'm not a college graduate. I did fail out of a college. I did go to college for 5.5 years on Staten Island, and I didn't even get 50 credits, much to my father's chagrin. My father looked at me one day and he said, "Are you going to ever effing graduate or what?" And he stopped paying my tuition, and that was it after 5.5 years. So I'll give just a quick short one for myself because, especially to set the stage for this, I love the way you guys all, because it kind of, I skip over all the stuff that I usually love to talk about, and I'll say that it's interesting that you said you fell into this. I never planned on doing this. Well, I always had it in my mind, maybe at some point when I'm like in my mid-50s and I retire from Wall Street, maybe one day I'll open a rehab. I like the idea of being able to kind of run something that I love to do just myself, not non-professionally in my kitchen, at my kitchen table, which I've been doing for 24 years now. I like the idea of kind of maybe doing something like that, but it was just an idea that might never even be born out. But so for me, it's weird. A lot of people go to Wall Street and they get messed up. I went to Wall Street already a full cocaine addict and alcoholic, and I'm on this crazy trading desk like you see the movies Boiler Room. I mean, I was a kid, and I fell in with these lunatic people, and I was on one of these trading desks, and I was just like qualifying leads, and I'm getting there. You work at 7 o'clock in the morning until 7:30, 8 o'clock at night for $200 a week. And you had to make your bones. You had to earn your stripes. And then eventually they let you take your Series 7, and if you pass it, you become a broker. That's the deal. And so I'm there, and I'm an animal. And I mean, I was an animal, dialing for dollars, just all day long, no stop, all go. I'm a cocaine addict, right? So I'm wasted, and I love, I'm like, absolutely, that just so fit my temperament, my personality. And two of the guys that I was working with, including my boss, was sober. And he saw me coked out of my mind with the little white dots, and he knew. And he called me into his office one day, and I remember on Wall Street, I get called into the boss office, and he goes, "So last night you, at some point yesterday evening, you went to a bar, probably Guido's, because he knew where I was from on Staten Island." He's like, and then maybe did you get your first 40 piece at around like 8 o'clock? And I'm like, I literally got a 40 piece at 8 o'clock. I'm like, holy shit. And he literally, and I said, and I'm thinking to myself, were they following me? Because he's like, at midnight you decided to go home and just get one more 20 and bring it with you. And then you decided at 2 o'clock in the morning you weren't going to be able to sleep anyway. So you called up your guy, and literally he called it to what I drank and how much I used, almost to the dollar. I'm like, I thought they were following me around. And it turns out that he's just an alcoholic and a cocaine addict, and he knew exactly what I did the night before. And so that's the first time anybody ever said to me, like, you clearly have a problem and an issue, and it was because I went to Wall Street. And so they took me to my first bunch of meetings, 12-step meetings. I did nothing they suggested. I didn't get a sponsor. I didn't get a home group. I didn't do any of the things they suggest. I They gave me one of those textbooks or whatever that I never opened or looked at. I used it at some point to crush cocaine on many months later, but whatever, that was just me. And I didn't take anything seriously. And I was able to kind of maintain for 7 months on the marijuana maintenance program. It does not work. Eventually, that little baby high, not good enough. And we want to get really high. And eventually, it brings you back. And so it did for me. And so I ended up leaving that particular job, and so I stayed on Wall Street, kind of, right? I was basically unemployable wreck for a long, long time. Like I had already well dropped out of college. I officially left school. It was the timing of it was perfect to get that job. I said, well, I'm done with school. My father already said he wasn't paying anymore after 5.5 years. So it was good timing. I was working as a cook, a short order cook at Al's Pizzeria on Staten Island on Jewett Avenue. And I leave, I get the job with those guys. I don't fail out with them. I just make a decision to go a different direction. And I went to a different place, then I went to a different place, then I went to a different place. And somehow throughout that, I was able to pass my Series 7 and I got my licenses. But I was, in the end, I worked for a particular place. I ended up partnering with like one of the biggest cocaine dealers on Staten Island at the time. And he becomes my partner at the brokerage firm, which was a good idea for me to partner with that particular guy. Anyway, go on forever about that, but I will say that, you know, at that point is where I hit my absolute bottom. I was technically employed, but I really wasn't employed because I never went there. If I did go, I was usually violent and angry. And I would show up every once in a while, and I blew a really big deal, and I had a big opportunity. And, you know, even he was done with me, you know what I mean? Like, even that guy was like, I can't take this anymore. And I end up going to my first detox. I'm the guy that my mom didn't want me in the house. Everyone kicked me out. My brother, my parents, mom, dad, I would go knock on the door. They put the chain. What do you want? That's, you know, it's not like, hey, what's up, Richard? It's, what do you want? My mom, when I went over to her house, I'm the guy that she would hold her purse the entire time walking around the house. My mother would never have her purse not be in her hand if I was in the house with them. I punched holes through her walls. I was insane at that point. And so, you know, finally I went to her and knocked on the door, and she said, what? And I said, I think I have a problem with alcohol and drugs. I always tell that when I tell my story, and she said, you think so? We're the last ones to know. And so, but I knew, and I just resigned myself to that. That's just what it is. I'm an alcoholic and a cocaine addict. I don't give a shit. And that's just how I live. And so, you know, they sent me to Bailey Seton Detox on Staten Island, and that was the first time. So I know nothing of the treatment industry because I know detox because I went to detox for 7 days. But on Staten Island, and it's still that way. Anybody watching that's from Staten Island, there are rehabs outside of Staten Island. None of us ever looked. We don't know. There's 2 hospitals on Staten Island. You go for detox, and that's it. And then you go into one of the fellowships, and that's recovery, apparently. I didn't go anywhere. There was no sober living. There was no treatment options or opportunities, at least that I was made aware of. I got lucky that I went the day I got out of detox. I fell in with a group of people who told me, you should do the 12 steps. You should do Big Book. And they gave me a thing, and this is what they did, and my sponsor helped me, and he guided me through that way. Right. So I had my experience, right, and I got sober. But I didn't get in the treatment field. Again, I got sober on Staten Island. There was no treatment field. I wasn't even aware of it at that point, right? So now I'm sober on Staten Island, and I'm doing my thing, and I end up talk about unbelievable. And again, we talk about careers and how blessed and lucky I've been, and how amazing my career was. But I literally sponsored a gazillion people, and one of the guys that I sponsored opened a door for me. And I'm not going to go into the whole thing, although I'd love to tell the story because it's so cool. But I especially always think of the people watching. I think about the young people in recovery, new to recovery. You're behind in everything in life, right? I was 25 and a half years old when I came in. All my friends had graduated college, who graduated law school, who got married, who's having kids, and I was a bum. I had no credit. I had a arrest record. I had nothing, right? My dad finally allowed me to stay in one of the back bedroom of his condo. Other than that, I would have been homeless. I was technically out of the detox. No one would let me in. But my dad gave me one more chance, which was like one of however many more chances, but one more chance to stay with him. But, you know, my point is we all come to it we all find ourselves in treatment in different ways with different backgrounds. I was not formally educated. I didn't have a college degree. And one of my sponsees opened a door for me in Wall Street. And he ended up in a way that I was a retail stockbroker at that point, selling stocks about companies I knew nothing about. I just had I could talk on the phone and talk you into something. What I was selling you, I had no idea. But when you get sober, I remember my sponsor told me, my time's about to go up, so I'm just going to cancel it and I'll wrap it up. I don't want to keep it rude on me. You can do that when you sit in this chair. But I told my sponsor when I first got sober, you know, I was like doing inventories and doing this different stuff, and my sponsor was like, so what's the problem with you with work? Because I told him, I said, I can't do this anymore. And he said, why not? I said, because it's dishonest. And he said, you're lying to people on the phone? And I said, no, I'm not lying to anybody on the phone. I said, but in a way I am, because it's all a lie. I don't know what I'm doing. I've never been formally educated in finance. I'm selling a company that I think is going to do okay, but I don't really know. I'm given a thing. This is what the company does. Tell them it's great. But that's not honest, because I don't really know if it is great. Like, I don't have any real informed way to be able to tell them that. And I said, I'm not comfortable doing it anymore. So now I'm at a crossroads in recovery. You want to be really recovered, then you've got to stop doing. You can't live dirty and stay clean. And once it becomes unacceptable to you personally, you've got decisions to make, and you're going to have to do something else. And so here I am, and I'm about to quit my job, and my sponsor's like, you know, be as honest as you could be, find something in the meantime, don't put yourself, you're giving your dad money now for rent, whatever. So I said, all right, I got to do it. And a sponsee opened the door for me and got me a job, a dream job on Wall Street. I could spend an hour, a program just talking about that. It was so insane. I had no business even getting that job. Merrill Lynch wouldn't even have given me a job in their lunchroom. I couldn't have been a lunch worker because of all the stuff on my record. They literally would not have let me serve food in their lunchroom, and he got me on a trading desk. It's insane. Right. Having said all that, I did not come to treatment like, how did you get in the field? We know. Me, I didn't get into the treatment field until I was 20 years sober, and I didn't intend on doing it. I had written down here to remind myself to say it, but a lot of really good meetings get started with a resentment in a coffee pot. And one of the reasons, the sun, moon, and stars lined up. That's so how true. I found myself in this. But it was twofold. One, a friend of mine had come and said to me, I was in the treatment field. I'm thinking about starting it. Could you introduce me to your friend who has money that maybe they'll invest in a thing? So I was just putting two people together, having nothing to do with me whatsoever. So that's how I got. And then that person was like, I'll do it if Richie gets involved. And I was like, who, me? And I had no intention of that at all. And at the same token, at the meetings that I go to outside, there were a lot of young kids coming in from all these rehabs. And I'm like, so, you're getting a sponsor? You're doing 90 and 90? Are you going to get, go through the book? And they're like, what book and how do you get a sponsor and what's 90 and 90? And I'm like, what are they teaching you in these rehabs? I was infuriated at my home group. Constantly, I'd talk to them and I would be like this. I'm like, I don't know what they're going over in these rehabs. You guys are lost and none of them know what they're supposed to be doing. And so with that resentment and with that just happened, the sun, moon, and stars lined up. Boom, all of a sudden I find myself in the treatment field. And from a different way, right? As somebody who never worked in housing, never did anything in the treatment field at all. Right. And now all of a sudden I'm being asked, hey, what do you think about starting a company? You've got a lot of experience on Wall Street and whatever. What do you think? So you don't start by creating it at the top down. You've got to go learn what it is. What do people do at rehabs? And let me figure out what they do wrong, what I don't like. And let me see if I can make it better or fix it. Or at least that was kind of my first, how it was broached for me. It's not the typical way of getting involved in the treatment field. You know what I mean? Mine was a little opposite everyone else's. But isn't that odd, right? And this is recovery. This is real life. Sometimes, the college-educated genius starts off as a tech and eventually ends up running, RCA for New Jersey and New York. Somebody else who's like me who couldn't hack it in school, all of a sudden I start up running a company. Like people look at it and say, you got no business running that company. I'm like, I know, I hear you. They're going to find out I'm a fraud one day and they're going to pull me out of here. So now we know kind of who we all are and how we ended up in the treatment field. There's a few things I wrote because I wanted to make sure one thing, you mentioned law, and before we go into the questions and stuff, there's things, people say stuff and I like to make little notes because you mentioned law enforcement, and you said that person gave you a card or pulled you and said, you need more, you need help.
Absolutely.
So many times that has happened. We've personally experienced that. We go and we talk to all of our local police departments. Yep. The cops, the firemen, the EMS workers, they have an eye. We get calls from them all the time. They'll see a kid that's in trouble And and thank you to all of you. Most of the ones that we have, there's no insurance, but we're happy to help anyway, But we help everybody, dude. We don't
that
care.
officer,
They call.
that
Saved your
officer
life.
saved
your life.
my
Happens
life.
with us all the time.
And
Happens to us
I'll
all the
tell you,
time.
my career has been saying thank you and giving back in every way that I can. But that officer, in my mind, if my own family wouldn't talk to me, but this officer had enough, gumption to not just once, but several times see me, whether it was her beat or what have you, but she stopped every single time and said, "What are you doing? Get out of here." And she handed me that card more than once. Yeah. She just,
Listen,
and thank God she did.
It's funny how things change when you get sober, because when I was out there using and breaking into cars, I hated the police. That's people in the world I wanted to see. And then when you get sober and you start getting a little bit mature, I love a nice, strong law enforcement presence in my neighborhood. Right? It's weird how things go full circle, right? But yes, and that was so for anybody, even in the treatment field or anybody. Listen, putting brochures in all the police stations, EMS, the more educated they are about addiction. They need education in addiction just like anybody else. Most of them look at it as, what's the druggie, right? It's the old school. It's how we grew up. A druggie is a dirty, filthy, criminal, a dishonest, angry, dangerous shitbag, right? But that's really not, right? I mean, it's soccer moms and accountants' kids and policemen's kids and everyone's kids, and it's from any walk of life. Addiction don't care. Right? We don't do any of that. Addiction don't care. We don't, in treatment, we don't do politics. We don't do religion. We don't do race. You know why? Because addiction don't care. It goes at, it hates us all, and it wants us all dead. So we always say, and this is old school treatment stuff, as you guys know, you put your life problems and all the life stuff that you got to deal with in real life in this basket, put your addiction in this one. You deal with that, and all that stuff will figure itself out and take care of itself once you're sober enough to address it and deal with it when you're done. So that's what we focus on. So I wanted to call that out because I wrote it down because I said you're right, and I've had that experience and seen it quite a bit. Paul, I love in a weird way, because who knows who's watching this. Paul's like, I'm not from New Jersey. I'm from New York. I really wanted to throw it out there.
You're in New Jersey, though. You're in Jersey.
I was born in a real state. I happen to also be a Staten Island boy, born and raised, but I didn't think it was necessary to bash New Jersey. But that's all good. And then I also love the fact that you said, again, a lot of the stuff I say because I think about the kids or the people watch us thinking getting into treatment, because that's what we're about to go into now. Yeah. And that's why I like to point out diversity and the difference in backgrounds. Like the fact that I'm a dropout and that I never got a college education, I never got a college degree, and yet here I am anyway. It doesn't matter where you're at. It doesn't matter what addiction did to you, where it took you, where you went. Paul said, you wouldn't know it by looking at him now. He used to be a ball player and blah, blah, blah. I mean, look at us, right, dude? Now I'm like almost a 50-year-old man, and of course I'm big as a house I've gotten. I used to work for a moving company, and I was ripped, but I'm not like that anymore. But life changes, man. Things are different, and it's all good. Go ahead.
Wait, can I make something?
By the way, just yell it out. Okay. You two, too. If you want to bang in, this is back and forth. So there's no...
Stephanie, you mentioned homelessness. You said you were homeless.
I was.
It reminded me of, I didn't kind of tell you how my whole thing ended up, and like you, Rich, I was on Wall Street. I had my Series 7, my Series 6, my Series 63, my MBA. I had all these great things. I was director of sales and marketing for this big firm. And I knew, I got sober and I knew sobriety. And then my pride, my ego. And I told that story because I wanted you guys to know that, that pride and that ego, and how, I always held on to that. And that same pride that got me all those great things was the same pride that when I relapsed, that wouldn't let me come back. But I just wanted to talk about, so here I am, I'm on Wall Street, I'm doing all these great things, and I'm making all that money like you talked about. But I couldn't find myself. I was making all this money, but I wasn't happy. And then life hit me like it hits everybody. Me and my wife weren't getting along. She had an affair, and it devastated me. Then 9/11 happened. And I was on the 7th floor when that first plane hit, standing underneath when that second plane hit. And then a month later, after 9/11, they found my brother dead in my apartment in New York. So I'm going through all that with 9.5, 10 years of sobriety, but not talking to anybody. And we talked about how, you said like how addiction and it doesn't care. But my addiction, everything, it's working on me, but I'm not telling anybody. I'm not saying anything because I got all this money and I'm too proud and too big to tell anybody what's going on. So just so you know, I lost my house. I lost that Wall Street job. I lost all that. And it wasn't until I found myself begging for welfare.
That's my pride and ego,
right?
Is what made me homeless and kept me homeless because I didn't need anybody's help.
Come on.
Everything that I had lived through in my childhood, who I could very well blame my addiction on, but the reality of it is my addiction is my responsibility. I claim it. I own it. Right. My sickness. Right. But that pride and ego told me I didn't need anybody, which was as far from the truth as I could get. Because you know what? I needed my higher power. I needed other people. I needed my fellowship. I needed strong souls around me to carry me through. And I think that the reason I still hold that one white chip is because I have a group of women that have surrounded me for 16 years. Mm-hmm. Some have been around 16 years, some have come, some have gone, some are brand new, some are very much older than me in this journey. But, my daughter was diagnosed terminally ill. I have 8 children and I've fostered and adopted 4 more. Mm-hmm. I've been in this industry for 15 years. Mm-hmm. I have seen highs, lows, crashes throughout my sobriety. And I hold that one white chip today because that pride and ego stays in check because I don't do it. I don't do it. My fellowship, my God does, because that pride and ego got me nowhere but homeless, period, end of story. Yeah. And that was one of the hardest things I had to grab in the first 2 years of my recovery, which brings us back to our topic. But I'll wait.
That was good. Listen,
right on.
A great segue back in.
Yes.
But no, I mean that's and it's an interesting, pride and ego. The truth is, we could just say, what the hell with the rest of this topic? Let's talk about pride and ego.
Right.
We could spend that.
But how about the pride and ego that develops as a result of working in the field?
Which is why she said it's going to lead you back into this, which it does totally.
Absolutely.
So and one of the things is we have a series of questions. Before I go into it, we have to take a pause, and we have to say, for those of you who are just joining us, you're listening to The Other Side. This is the official podcast of Blue Crest Recovery Center. I'm Richie. I'm the CEO here at Blue Crest. Should I read you? Nah, you know what? You can watch us. If you're already watching us, then you know what you're watching us on: YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes. So we've been talking about, we're just kind of what we were like, what happened, and what led us into the treatment field. Everyone that you see, if you're new, that's sitting here has been in addiction, active addiction personally in our lives, has found recovery, and then one way or another, we just told our individual stories of how we ended up in the treatment field. And so now that's the main focus of the podcast and this is where we start going into the Q&A of this stuff. We could break it down into 50 different ways. And one of the things I also wrote, because I reminded myself, think about what we have here, right? We have the housing aspect, we've got the marketing aspect, and just because that's the, outreach. But marketing aspect, we hate to use the word, because marketing is for tires and advertising, and we deal with people, and we have a passion for people, so we hate to use it, but for lack of a better term, outreach. But we'll say outreach, you've got the housing aspect, you've got the clinical aspect, you've got the owner rehab aspect of like the kind of global view of the whole thing. But when you fall into the opportunity, the possibility of getting in treatment, some people early in recovery stop and say to themselves, I think I want to do this. I want to help people. I want to be a counselor. I want to be an outreach coordinator, or I want to be a housing tech, or I want to run a house, or I want to, and usually depending on who they kind of connect with, that's what they gravitate towards. Yep. Plus, some of it, for some of you guys, it's personality. Some of us are born salespeople. Right? My grandmother told me when I was a kid, you'd sell ice cream.
That's right.
And she also said you're going to end up in jail, my grandmother. So I don't know, my grandmother was but she always said you could sell ice to an Eskimo, so I would gravitate towards that. Some people are more maternal or paternal, and so they may go more towards something else. So really it depends, but I personally think, and I'll hear from each of you guys, I think each one of those, and I hate to say this the wrong way, but don't misunderstand, but each one of those represent a different level of danger in early recovery for me. I mean, I'll call it that way, because ego, money, all that stuff, ego and money are two dangerous bedfellows in early recovery. Sometimes that's what my sponsor means by I wish you a slow recovery. He didn't mean getting recovered. He wanted me to speed through 12-step recovery, but he wanted me life stuff. The slower that stuff repairs itself, sometimes for some of us, the better off we are. That deflation of ego and keeping where I'm clipping coupons for ShopRite and I'm putting only $6 in gas in my car at a time. It keeps somebody right and keeps you right-minded, and I think that's a positive thing in early recovery as well.
You know what I like what you said, Richie, is you fell into this through a resentment.
Yeah, kind of.
You're the only other person besides myself that I started my journey to be a counselor over a resentment.
There you go.
Resentment of my counselor in treatment. God bless her soul.
So let's hear the story, because that's the thing. What really got you connected with treatment industry? So go ahead.
Oh my goodness. So, throughout my 11-month journey through treatment, I remember in the first few months in residential treatment, I had a beast of a counselor. God bless her soul. I don't know where she is today, but I wish I could give her a big hug and just tell her that everything she said was right. That is not what I told her at the time at all in any way. I knew this woman was out to get me. She didn't like me. She didn't want my future at hand. I remember a game-changing event is I knew that I was going back to where I had just came from, and I was going to surround myself with the same people, and I wasn't going to use because, I had this. And she came in with the rap sheet of the house that I was going to in the middle of a group room, and she dropped it on the floor in front of all my peers. And I said in that moment, I think I had been in treatment 3-4 months, very, very early recovery. I said in that moment, if she only knew what it was like to wake up under a bridge with footprints around you, not knowing what that was. If she only knew what it was like to not want to go get high, but not be able to stop your own feet. If she only knew the desperation, then she would be able to help me today. And I could do this better than she can. I could reach people better than she can. I know this path. So that started out my journey. I thought that because I was educated, because I was what I considered to be clean and sober at that time, which I was literally just starting to not even crawl. I was like, what is that infancy stage when you start to roll over? And I really thought that I could bring the message so much better than this woman could. And I knew I was going to be the best counselor ever, and I was going to save so many people from the horror and the experiences that I had by, being that person. And it all started with a resentment. And I will tell you, it did not end
and yet it did, really.
And yet it did. And yet it did. And yet it did. And I'm really grateful today for her and for the fact that she wasn't in recovery.
Yeah.
And that she...
Which is what I was going to... Because I like to throw everything out as we thought.
She was not in recovery.
I could literally do a whole separate section with 3 counselors that are not in recovery, and anybody who thinks you need to be in recovery to help people with addiction, wrong. And I would never want a room full of us. Let's be honest. Everyone in your treatment facilities in recovery themselves, no way. I mean, we've got pros, amazing people that are with us.
Yeah,
but they're all brought to addiction for their own reasons.
Correct.
Man. And a lot of times it's a whole different perspective. It's an outside perspective. It's a family member or somebody who is affected in what. Usually they're affected in addiction, and so they don't just find it by accident completely. They're usually affected in some way, shape, or form by a family member, whatever. Invaluable. And I remember back when I was an ignorant fool and I was in early recovery, and I'd be like, I wouldn't talk to a therapist. Like, I'm not going to talk to a counselor that's not, your counselor's telling you that they're not even in recovery.
They don't know what it's like.
And I'm saying stuff like that. Yeah. And somebody had pointed out to me, so I don't understand. You have to have, a psychiatrist has to have anxiety and depression in order to help somebody through anxiety and depression. A counselor, someone has to have had AIDS in order to come up with a cure for AIDS. Like, that doesn't make no sense. Like, nothing you do, you don't always have to have had the exact experience. As a matter of fact, sometimes the best help comes from someone who has a totally different perspective to be able to meet that, to match that calamity with serenity. So it's just there's all sides of it, and so that's important to throw out there.
And many of
because-
them have outside issues that need
No
to be
doubt.
addressed.
No question. Yeah,
Trauma,
co-occurring,
childhood,
no doubt, no doubt.
co-occurring.
All right, so let's throw this out there. I'm going to start hitting you guys up with some questions, right? And I'll start with Nicoletta. Nicoletta, how does work in the addiction treatment industry affect your personal sobriety?
Well, oh God, you want the truth? No.
And conversely, how does your being in recovery affect your performance working in the treatment industry? It's an interesting...
Yeah, I mean, it's pros and cons, obviously. But the bottom line is this. As long as my personal recovery is not dependent on my job, and as long as my personal recovery is intact outside of my employment, I can perform my job very effectively.
What do you mean by that?
Having boundaries, trusting universe, trusting life, taking my own inventory. Why am I being challenged? What button is being pushed? What is this telling me about me? How can I be more helpful? How can I be more effective? Everything that I've learned in 12 steps, everything that recovery has taught me are tools that I bring into life to deal with whatever situation, right? So whatever situation is thrown at me at work, I think there's like this element of like ego can really rebuild itself, and we can feel very empowered by working in this field because we're constantly in a position of helping, right? We're serving others, we're helping. And there's a tiring aspect to that, number one. Right? There's a lot of neediness that's occurring. There's a lot of draining of energy that can be occurring, right? If I'm not, rehabilitating myself, so to speak, after work in some ways, recharging, self-caring, cleansing, grounding, whatever.
So let me. I want to ask you something. I want to get specific about, and I'll just a couple of the things that I knew that I wanted to talk to each of you about to see what your own experiences are with it. Some people more directly affected maybe than others. You maybe earlier on in your career, not so much now, I think, but we'll see. But for you, let's look at the tech part of it. Tech, and for you too, especially, right? Let's talk about that. So you have clients that come to the facility or come to your house or whatever, and you're in charge, and you're helping them, or you're watching them, you're minding them, and you have an outside speaker come in, an outside NA speaker, a CA speaker, an A speaker, one of the 12-step people come in, and they do a meeting. They have a meeting for your people. Now, you're in the room, right? And you got to keep your eye on these folks, right? Because, little Billy might be trying to sneak whatever, and who's handing who what, and you're like, psst, psst, listen to the speaker. You're paying attention. Who's got to go to the bathroom, and you're like, oh, my God, again. And so you're dealing with the whole meeting. Then when that meeting is over and everyone goes back to, okay, did you make your meeting for the day? Is that your meeting?
No.
Did you make a 12-step meeting for that day for your personal recovery?
No.
But you're telling me that after you've
Not
been
if I'm
to three
paid.
of those.
But
you've been to three of those
Don't
throughout
matter.
the day. But
It
when
don't
you
matter.
leave work, you're telling me you want to go to
I'm
another
not paying
one
attention
for you?
I'm not necessarily paying attention to the message. I'm
Right.
paying attention. I'm getting paid for that. First of all,
No.
I'm getting paid for
There
that.
you go.
And
There you
that's
go.
the difference.
Yeah.
Like, you can't call it service if you're getting a paycheck. I don't
Agreed.
care who you are.
That's a fact.
And that's been my motto this whole time, and that's just the way it is. And it's worked for me.
But don't you find it hard to want to go to another meeting?
Sure,
for
but
your
you need to have
personal
stamina.
recovery
Not
at the end
everybody
of the
can
day?
work in this field.
I'm with
When
you.
people come to me, I say, don't do it. Don't do it unless you're absolutely sure you want to do it. Dip your toe in it, volunteer, be surrounded by it. Then
So what do you say to the young person who just took a job, they're a tech in a treatment facility, and they're telling me and telling you, I did 2 meetings already today through my job. Would you tell them they have to still go to me? And if they're the kind of people that are saying, I don't want to go to another meeting today, I'm all meetinged out, what do you think their prospects are for long-term in that field or recovery
this is the
itself?
trap of being in recovery and working in the field. I would tell them the same thing that I tell some of my residents who are giving me a million excuses that I've heard 3 million times about why they shouldn't go to a meeting, why they don't have to get a sponsor, why the job is more important, why the girlfriend is more important, or whatever. It's the alcoholic mind. I don't see individuals anymore. I see alcoholism or I see sobriety. I see you're living in the truth or you're delusional. And I think there is this, I think we confuse like I'm grateful and I'm experiencing surrender and I'm like in this bubble of like recovery and safety and and then we want to give back and we want to serve and we get this fantasy idea of wanting to work in the field because we feel so close to it. But I think it's an idea that we get disillusioned with quickly.
Yes.
Quickly.
And
which is why I'm not in clinical.
and that's what I was going to ask.
And I've done all the classes.
And that's why it's good. Do you
I've
think
taken all the classes just to know what they're talking about.
Right.
What they're getting educated
But
on.
even that's not for everyone, right? In
No.
the field, there's a lot of
No.
different jobs and aspects of
No.
being able to help people.
Being
and
a
do
tech
something.
is not for everyone.
No.
Unless you're willing to not take it personally, unless you're willing to get punched in the face emotionally, unless you're willing to get spat on, unless you're willing to get lied to and not like be a drama queen about it, don't work in it.
Yeah, there you go.
That's right.
Like you need to have stamina,
Sure.
you need to have some grit, you need to like not take things personally. Like it takes certain qualifications to work in the field.
Agreed. Steph, you are in outreach. You sponsor women, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
You sponsor gals, right?
I do.
So you get those phone calls, right? Can be
I
kind of
do.
annoying sometimes. Let's be honest. When you sponsor a lot of girls, for me, it's a football game. Giants are on, although now I've kind of this season stinks because of all the COVID stuff. But whatever.
Right.
But you know, I'm watching the game and I see the phone ring and it's one of my sponsees. I'll be honest with you. I've been doing this 24 years. I don't really want to pick the phone up. I'm gonna, but I don't want to. You know what I mean? That happens sometimes. But when you're in treatment and you've taken 50 phone calls that day, and you've dealt with families and this problem and that issue and this problem, and I don't want to go, and I'm on a street corner, and well, you've done this to me 3 times already. Are you really going to be there? Oh my God, my son. Okay, ma'am, calm down. We're going to talk you through this. Crying for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then you see a sponsee call coming in. You know you're good for another 45 minutes.
At
of
least.
drama.
At least.
Right.
I sponsor women.
So-
45 minutes is a
Tell
quick
them.
call.
Tell us, what does that look like to work as in outreach? It's got its own whole nother set of, you don't deal with the same stuff they do, right? Because they're not, it's a little different. Your connection with them is a little different, right?
I started as a tech. I'm
Oh, I know, you know it all, but I'm talking about this
glutton for
aspect.
punishment.
But I'm
No,
asking
but I'll
you
tell
to
you.
speak, I'm asking for you to speak on, and again, before you answer, I'm going to say, because this is my point, the housing part, and we get it. I see. I mean, you're talking about in the trenches every day, going to the
Every day,
meetings,
all day.
on top of what you already have to do your own personal recovery. You've made it clear, and I get it. But there's also something grounded about that. Doing tech work to start with. Now, you may move up and over and right and left and do other things in treatment, become a full counselor, go over into outreach. You could work in admissions. You may start as a tech to learn the field and then find what you're drawn towards. And if the place you work for is good, they're going to look and have an eye. They're going to want to develop your talent and what you feel passionate for.
Right.
And that's all well and good, and that's fine. There's a grounding to that, and when you start out there, you learn the field. I think that's the best way to start, is in either housing or just a plain tech on the floor with no CADC classes until you've learned a little bit and decide for yourself, can I actually do this for a living? Some people go right into the outreach coordinators. And now that is
the
there's
most
more money,
dangerous thing
there's
you can
more
do.
ego. I think it's the most dangerous
most
aspect of early
dangerous
treatment.
thing you can do.
We would never, we don't
No.
like to hire anybody unless they have 2 years of recovery. We have made some exceptions for people who are very 12-step oriented, but not less than a year. And really, we want 2 years at a minimum because there's a maturity that comes with that.
that's
I see people hire people in marketing after 6 months, which I think is insane. But then you have other people who fall into housing stuff quite a bit earlier. You did. If the motivations are right and the person's the right type and you feel okay with it, as long as you keep an eye on them and you're holding their hand through the process, okay, fine. But your end is tough. Your end is difficult. So
Richie,
tell
I'll
us.
tell you, coming straight into marketing is almost, setting yourself up for a relapse, period, and story. I mean, you don't have a personal life in this space. There is no you time because it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. Not answering that phone could mean life or death for someone.
Yes.
Period. End of story. Like, this phone for me is a lifeline to so many people that don't know where else to turn. It's that card, right? It's that card somebody handed. Now, like, I'm a mother, my husband is a saint because I've been in this space for 15 years. I've been marketing for 13 of those 15. And he's seen me answer phones in labor with our children. I'm not even kidding. I'm as serious as a heart attack.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I'll throw that out there from my own marketers, from my own outreach. Because you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There are some of them whose girlfriends are done. They leave them. I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. It's ridiculous. We're on vacation. And they're picking up a call at poolside in Mexico.
Right.
And I'm telling these guys, Stop answering your phone. Forward it to someone else. Take a week off. Disconnect.
But you can't.
They can't do it.
That's
They
right.
That
can't
first
do it.
That's right.
time,
That's
that
right.
first
That's
time,
Yeah.
that first time,
Yeah.
you talk to that mother that's lost that child.
I'm with you. I get it.
That first
Yeah,
time
that's it. I know.
you've made that connection
That's
with
right.
someone,
Yeah.
and you know that they're no longer here to give a breath.
Yeah.
It does something to
I know.
you as a marketer. And I'll tell you, that weight that you carry, right? I can't tell you how many times I've talked to somebody at 11 o'clock at night and I said, man, I can have a driver there for you. Like, it doesn't matter where you're at or what you're doing. I can get you there right now. Hell, I'll come myself. And they said, you know what? I just need an hour. And I never spoke to that person again. Like, you carry that with you. You
Yeah.
carry that in every fiber of your being. I'm a mother.
Good people carry
That's
it.
great.
Because let's also be honest, when people in early recovery, you're a big book girl and you're in this for real. Like, you're in this.
I'm in
like,
this,
for you,
heart
you
and
have
soul.
a passion for it, but there's a difference. Some people are in this for money, like anything else. And like, who am I to say? But I can say that there are some places that are better than others, some people that are better than others. Better meaning there are people in anything in the world for the right reasons and for the wrong reasons. And if that right reason is up front, you can tell just by talking to someone that that's the thing, right? Like, you know the difference, and you can tell the difference between somebody who knows the right things to say, but it's not a part of them. But it's a calling. It really is. It's a calling, and I see that in you clearly.
I tell people all the time, I hire people and I say, this isn't a job. This is a life commitment.
Yeah.
This isn't 9 to 5. This isn't, vacations. I mean, one of my favorite things now is I'm teaching my girls to ski, right? And I have a jacket that my phone sits right here. I can't tell you, I've answered the phone on Space Mountain at Disney World. I mean, it's just, it's a commitment. And in early recovery, that takes every piece of you. It fuels your pride and ego. And it takes all of that love and nurture that you need to be pouring into yourself to become that healthy, grounded, well-boundaried, stable person. And you've just given it away. You've literally just said, it is no longer about me. It is about everyone that's in need. And then it does something to you. It really does. So many marketers that come in early, and I've seen it time and time and time again, they'll make the mistake of showing up to bring somebody in, and they walk into that house and they don't ever walk back out sober. They go in, it's almost like the plane, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Because you ain't making it out if you pass out. And I see it in marketing time and time again. And I thank God that he put my path where it is, and really and really cracked my knuckles on working inside the treatment center.
Sure.
Before he gave me the opportunity to reach out to what I love and what I'm super passionate about, and that's speaking to other families and other people in need, and sending the message to the officers and to the hospitals and to the first responders and to everyone that sees this ugly disease head on, day after day and minute after minute, and saying there is hope.
My first ex-wife would say, muy peligroso. I swear. Very dangerous, or can be anyway. So,
Yes.
my man Paul, let's go to you. So, I mean, the questions are all similar but the same. But first, same question to you, because you're, tech on the floor. You deal with everybody. Like I said, you're more closer to where you have to see them in meetings, and you run some groups, and but running a group and having one-on-ones with people all day long, doing what you do to help. And dude, I see you. Like, you have a God effect on people that are, I know, I'm serious, right? Like, you're a total God guy, but it don't mean you don't need to go to church. How do you separate the two? How do you separate the two? How do you live that boundary where you have to have personal recovery, and then you bring what you bring and you give of yourself? And I know you give fully. I watch you day in and day out. But how do you manage both of those things where it creates a buoyancy rather than make you feel like you're going to drown?
Okay. So, you guys, first of all, I almost felt like crying when I listened to some of the things you guys say. And you know what, Richie? I don't
cries a lot.
I'm
Crier.
very.
Oh my God,
That's
he cries.
great.
I don't forget where I came from. I went from Park Avenue to the park bench. I went from the penthouse to the outhouse. And I'll never forget that. And I'm one of those kind of guys, and we talked about homeless and all that, but my higher power, God, he had to break me. I talked about the ego and pride. I was broken. But they talk about, sometimes, I wasn't just broken. God didn't just humble me, but he humiliated me. The foreclosure sign, them taking away the cars. So when I started getting better, and I work where I work now, I watched this, and it's more than just this is not a job for me. This is where I'm supposed to be. I always think, I was telling somebody else about this story. I'm a tech. I'm a tech. I take urines. I move chairs around. I move clients around. I set up rooms, and people say yeah, but you on Wall Street. Yeah, but this is what keeps me humble. I do this. There was this one day, I'll never forget it, Richie, at Blue Crest, and I was throwing out the garbage, and my boss called me. Drew had called me, and he said, "Hey, Paul, the ashtray, the cigarette thing on the outside is smoking." So I got this garbage bag in my hand. Now he wants me to go put the garbage out. Now he wants me to put water on the garbage. So I go outside and I'm pouring this, and it started to rain. So I had garbage in my hand. I'm pouring out, and it started to rain. And one of the buses pulled up where all the clients are coming in, and there I am, 55 years old with all this, and it was like almost God showing me this too is okay. And I didn't feel bad about it. You know what I mean? It hit me for a while. But for me, I had to get to the point, and I want you guys to know, when I lost my job on Wall Street and I was bankrupt, I was bankrupt. But for me, I was spiritually bankrupt. When I lost everything, I lost my money, but I lost my soul. I lost everything in me. So when I got back in treatment and I got back this, I do this because it keeps me grounded. I love this job. I love what I do. It's more than a passion for me. So now, I'm a God guy. I'm a love guy. I always talk about love. Love is the foundation of everything that I do. So I love helping people. But I have to be very careful. It's love. It's the boundaries. And for me, my higher power. I'm a very spiritual person. When I started off in this field, I didn't start off coming here to work. I started off ministering in treatment programs. I started off going to prisons, speaking to the guys. I started off going to Salvation Armies, speaking to the guys about who I am and what else. And then I kind of fell into this. So I kind of keep it separate because I know that I want to help them, but I know who I am, and I know what I can be. My ego and pride can flare up at any time, so I'm constantly going to my higher power and being honest. We talk about being honest, open, and willing. I don't let I keep my humility where it is. I love what I'm doing, but I can only help them as much as I help myself. So at the end of the day, when I watch them do whatever they do, I am certain, and I'm very aware, there before the grace of God goes I. And if I don't take care of me, I could be right back in those seats.
That's it.
Amen.
Right back in those seats. One bad decision away from sitting with the people that I'm trying to help. And I don't want that today.
Yeah. We all sponsor people, right? I mean, that's anytime you ever see me, all you got to do is ask. Hey, Richie's sponsoring guys right now. And if I ever say no, I'm dead.
Right.
I'm dead. You better stay away from me. Or if you're thinking of relapsing, I might be a good partner to go out with for a while.
Yep.
But, I mean, that's a fact, right? Sponsoring people becomes everything.
Yes.
It's funny how ego can mix with anything that we do, because we're talking a lot about that, and that is big in the treatment field. Anybody thinking about getting into the treatment field, definitely you, the one that started bringing up, and you were right, and the ego, and it can have its play even in the other side. It's not just in the treatment field, it's in our personal recovery side, right? When you get asked to go speak a lot, I go speak a lot. People were asking me, can you come do this conference? Can you do that conference? Blah, blah. Yeah, I'll do that conference. I had people call me up. We're out there now. Blue Crest, my story's out there. LinkedIn, this, that. I get calls from people I used to work with many years ago. My kid, this, that. And I remember I had gotten a call, and the guy's like, hey, my kid and whatever. And I'm like, well, listen, you want him to really come to my, if he comes to my rehab, I can't sponsor him. But if you send him somewhere else, I can go meet with him and I'll work with him one-on-one. Like, yeah, but he needs rehab. I'm like, no, I don't think you understand. You need a great sponsor. Like, I'm like, hear myself saying this. Like, I think I'm a great sponsor, right? But, I mean, I'm so invested in both sides. The ego could come anywhere. You know, what do people need? They need it all, right? I mean, if we could give them the best of everything, a solid sponsor, but at the end of the day, all any of us can ever really do is the best that we can. Are we showing up with the right motivations? Do we show up the right way? Are we giving our all? Are we making time for ourselves, for God, self-care? Are we doing our inventories? Are we sponsoring people? Are we doing all the 12 work that we stay grounded? Are we doing our own work so our own house is clean and in order? And if we are, and we look the right motivations to show up in treatment, best of all worlds, that's how you stay buoyant instead of it bringing you down to the bottom. If I'm out of whack in either one of those areas, the one can totally screw the other. But if both, I think, are lined up well, I think that they complement each other so well. I've had texts on my house, and one of them just said to me the other day, he's like, you know, I know a lot of people say they struggle sometimes doing this and doing that, but I gotta tell you, I feel like the work I do here just makes me even more alive. And I'm like, good for you. But that's where he's at right now. His personal recovery is clearly rock star. And now the experience he's having here is rock star as well. And he's like, I don't get it. Like in his mind, like, are you crazy? This makes me even more connected to God. But that's not always the case.
No.
It's not always the case. And sometimes it can feel that way for a year. But we have to always be very mindful
of that brick wall.
Have any of you had anybody who came to you in your careers and the places you work? And if you haven't had anybody at Blue Crest do a poll, you will. But for you two especially, I've had people who've come to me, great techs in houses. I've had great clinicians, young, early people who've come to me and said, I can't do this anymore. And these are good big book kids. And I'm like, really? Because I love them. And I'm like, really? And they're like, dude, my personal recovery, I discussed it with my sponsor, and I was like, say no more. I tell them all when they start, if at any point you get to the point where you feel like this might not be, you've got to recognize that and be honest with us. And I've had them come to me, and I love when they do. I hate it because I love them in the field, and I know they can help a lot of people. But if it's wrong for them, and once you become aware it's wrong for you, that's it. You got to go. And you got to call it. All right, so Kevin is saying that we're out of time. Oh, my God, we did go a little long, but there's nothing wrong with that. I guess everything we said needed to be said. Thanks for raining on parade, Kev. We appreciate it. Nick, thank you for not giving us any of the questions or comments. I don't know if you're still in the garage, but...
There was only a couple of comments.
Nick said there was only about 36 comments and 12 questions, and we didn't get to any of them. All right, well, next time, anybody who had a question, we'll email you the answers, and anybody with negative comments, keep them to yourselves. But I want to thank all three of you guys for coming, and this is a lot of fun to hang, right? I said it wasn't scary. It's just we're all talking to each other.
I just warmed up.
And there you go.
Now we can go. What's our next topic, Richie? Let's go.
We'll have you guys back
two-part
again
series,
for
no?
future 3-4-part series. But thank you very much for everybody for coming, and be well. And from Blue Crest, we'll see you next time.